Have you ever seen someone risk their entire career just to save the life of a complete stranger? Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who believes real heroes are the people who quietly save lives every day. The emergency room was louder than usual. Machines beeped without stopping. Nurses rushed from one bed to another. Doctors shouted medical terms across the room while worried families waited outside, hoping for good news. For everyone working there, it was just another busy Friday night. But nobody knew that within the next hour, one decision would completely change several lives forever. Victoria Carter adjusted her gloves and quickly walked toward the trauma bay. She had worked as a nurse for almost 20 years. Before joining the hospital, she had spent many years serving as a combat medic in the military. She had treated wounded soldiers under enemy fire, survived dangerous missions, and learned that every second mattered when someone was close to death. Experience had taught her one simple lesson: never ignore what your instincts are telling you. Many people inside the hospital respected Victoria because she stayed calm even during the worst emergencies. Unfortunately, not everyone appreciated her experience. The hospital's chief of trauma surgery, Dr. Victor Hayes, believed doctors should never be questioned. He graduated from one of the country's most respected universities. His medical record was excellent. His confidence was even bigger. He often reminded everyone that doctors made decisions while nurses simply followed instructions. Most nurses stayed quiet whenever he entered the room. Not because they agreed with him, because arguing with him usually ended badly. Suddenly, the ambulance doors burst open. Two paramedics rushed inside while pushing a stretcher carrying an unconscious man. His clothes were soaked from heavy rain. His breathing was weak. His skin looked unusually pale. "There is no identification," one paramedic reported while trying to catch his breath. "We found him lying in an alley only a few blocks away. He stopped responding during transport. We suspect a serious drug overdose." Dr. Hayes immediately stepped forward. "Let's move quickly," he said confidently. "Prepare for emergency intubation." Several residents began following his instructions. Victoria moved to the opposite side of the patient. Instead of looking only at the monitors, she carefully examined his body. Something immediately caught her attention. The patient's skin didn't look normal. His breathing pattern was unusual. His muscles twitched in strange ways. She leaned closer. There was also a faint smell she recognized instantly. Most people inside the room ignored it. Victoria couldn't. Years earlier, during a military operation overseas, she had treated soldiers exposed to a dangerous nerve agent. That unforgettable smell had stayed in her memory ever since. Her heartbeat became faster. She gently moved the patient's torn jacket. Near his neck she noticed several tiny blisters. Not ordinary burns. Not allergic reactions. Something much more dangerous. Dr. Hayes continued giving orders. "Prepare the standard medications. Let's secure his airway immediately." A young nurse named Olivia nervously picked up the medication tray. She had only been working at the hospital for a few months. Her hands shook while preparing the injections. Victoria suddenly stepped closer. "Wait." Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. The entire room became silent. Dr. Hayes slowly turned toward her. "What did you say?" Victoria looked directly at him. "I don't think this is a drug overdose." Several people exchanged confused looks. The doctor frowned. "What are you talking about?" Victoria pointed toward the patient's neck. "The blisters." She then looked toward the patient's face. The unusual muscle activity. Finally she quietly said, "And the smell? I've seen this before. It looks like exposure to a military nerve toxin." Several residents looked surprised. Others looked doubtful. Dr. Hayes almost laughed. "A military toxin? In the middle of this city?" "Seriously?" Victoria remained calm. "If I'm wrong, we lose a few extra minutes checking. If I'm right, the medication you're about to give will stop his heart." The room became even quieter. Olivia looked back and forth between them. She didn't know who to believe. Dr. Hayes crossed his arms. "You are a nurse. I am the chief of trauma surgery. I decide the treatment." Victoria didn't move. I understand. But please examine him one more time. Dr. Hayes shook his head. There isn't time. He turned toward Olivia. Administer the medication. Olivia slowly lifted the syringe. Victoria felt panic rising inside her. Every instinct told her the patient would die within seconds if that drug entered his bloodstream. She spoke louder this time. Don't do it. Olivia froze. The syringe stopped only inches away from the 4-line. Dr. Hayes' face turned red. Are you giving orders now? Victoria answered without raising her voice. I'm trying to save his life. The doctor stepped closer. If you interfere one more time, I'll personally make sure you never work in another hospital again. Victoria looked at the patient. His breathing became weaker. His muscles suddenly tightened. Foam appeared around his mouth. Time was running out. Dr. Hayes shouted. Inject the medication. Victoria answered immediately. No. Everyone stared at both of them. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For a few seconds, it felt like time itself had stopped. Then the patient's body suddenly jerked violently. The heart monitor changed rhythm. The alarms became louder. Victoria knew there was no more time to argue. She gently pushed Olivia's hand away before the medication entered the 4. The syringe slipped from Olivia's fingers and landed safely on the tray. Gasps filled the room. Dr. Hayes couldn't believe what had just happened. You just ignored my direct order. Victoria didn't answer. Instead, she rushed toward the emergency medication cabinet. Unlike everyone else, she wasn't searching for the usual emergency drugs. She reached the bottom shelf. Only a few people even knew those medications were stored there. Without hesitation, she grabbed the emergency antidotes. Several doctors looked completely confused. What is she doing? One resident whispered. Victoria quickly prepared the medicine. Every movement showed years of experience. Her hands never shook. She connected the medication to the patient's 4-line. Then she injected another emergency treatment directly into his thigh. Dr. Hayes shouted across the room. Stop. You have no authorization. You are destroying your career. Victoria ignored every word. She kept watching the patient's monitor. Nothing happened. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. The room became painfully quiet. Dr. Hayes folded his arms. His expression almost looked satisfied. You killed him. Several nurses lowered their heads. Olivia looked ready to cry. Then, one small beep echoed through the room. Another followed. Then another. The patient's oxygen level stopped falling. His heartbeat slowly became stronger. His breathing became steadier. Color slowly returned to his face. One resident looked at the monitor in disbelief. He's improving. Another doctor quickly checked the vital signs. Blood pressure is increasing. Oxygen saturation is climbing. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Victoria quietly closed her eyes for 1 second. She had been right. The treatment was working. Dr. Hayes stood completely speechless. His diagnosis had been wrong. The nurse he publicly criticized had just saved the patient's life. But instead of admitting his mistake, his anger became even stronger. You assaulted a physician. You ignored hospital protocol. You administered medication without my approval. He pointed toward the hospital security officers who had just entered after hearing the commotion. Escort Nurse Carter out immediately. Several nurses looked shocked. Olivia couldn't believe it. But sir, Dr. Hayes interrupted her. Effective immediately. Victoria Carter is suspended. You will clean out your locker and leave this hospital today. The room became silent once again. Victoria slowly removed her gloves. She looked one last time at the patient. His condition continued improving. At least now, he had a chance to survive. She quietly picked up her bag. Without arguing. Without defending herself. Without asking anyone for sympathy. As she walked toward the exit with 2 security guards following behind her, nobody realized something extraordinary was already happening outside the hospital. Far above the building, a military helicopter was rapidly approaching. And inside that helicopter was someone whose arrival would turn Dr. Hayes' world upside down forever. Victoria walked through the long hospital hallway without looking back. The security guards stayed a few steps behind her. Neither of them seemed happy about escorting someone who had just saved a patient's life. Doctors and nurses quietly watched her leave. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked ashamed. Olivia stood near the trauma room door with tears in her eyes. She knew Victoria had made the right decision. If she had followed Dr. Hayes' order, the patient would probably be dead. Still, nobody dared to challenge the chief surgeon. Victoria reached the staff locker room. She slowly removed her hospital badge. She folded her uniform carefully before placing it inside her bag. Every movement felt heavier than the last. 20 years of hard work. Thousands of patients treated. Countless nights without sleep. It all seemed to end because she refused to stay silent. The man showed an official government identification card. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm with the Department of Defense. Victoria looked surprised. The Department of Defense? Yes. We need you to come with us immediately. Victoria frowned. I'm afraid you've been misinformed. I don't work here anymore. I was fired less than 10 minutes ago. Daniel gave a small smile. We know. And that's exactly why we're here. Victoria looked even more confused. What do you mean? Our commanding officer would like to personally thank the person who saved one of our most important operatives. Victoria remained silent. Daniel continued. The patient you treated wasn't an ordinary civilian. He was working undercover. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. So, I was right. Daniel nodded. Completely. The toxin you recognized is highly classified. Very few people outside the military know it even exists. Victoria looked toward the hospital building. So why wasn't I told? Daniel answered honestly. Because nobody expected him to reach a civilian hospital alive. Before Victoria could ask another question, Daniel's phone vibrated. He listened for only a few seconds. Then his expression changed. We need to move. They're waiting. Inside the hospital. Everything had changed. The peaceful entrance was now filled with military vehicles. He looked back at Dr. Hayes. Who ordered the antidote? Dr. Hayes hesitated for the first time. It was part of the team's effort. The general looked toward the nurses. Who actually administered the medication? Nobody spoke. The room became silent. Finally, Olivia slowly raised her hand. It was Nurse Victoria Carter. The general nodded. Where is she? Olivia lowered her eyes. She was fired. Every military officer in the room suddenly looked toward Dr. Hayes. The general slowly turned his head. You fired her? Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. She violated protocol. She ignored my authority. She physically stopped my treatment. The general spoke quietly. And because she ignored you, our operative is alive. No one said a word. The silence became almost uncomfortable. The general stepped closer. Doctor, do you even understand who that patient is? Dr. Hayes swallowed nervously. I assumed he was. The general interrupted him. You assumed wrong. He is one of our highest-level intelligence officers. He was exposed during a classified operation. The antidote your nurse administered was exactly correct. Dr. Hayes' confidence completely disappeared. I wasn't aware. No. The general replied firmly. You weren't. And that's the problem. He handed the medical chart back. Your diagnosis would have killed him. Several doctors looked down at the floor. Nobody defended Dr. Hayes. The general turned toward one of his officers. Find Nurse Carter immediately. Bring her back. I don't care whether she's in the parking lot or halfway home. Yes, sir. At that exact moment, Victoria entered the hospital again, surrounded by federal agents. Everyone looked toward her. The same nurse who had been escorted out only minutes earlier was now returning under military protection. People whispered to each other. What is happening? Who is she? Why are soldiers with her? Victoria ignored the attention. She walked directly toward the general. The general smiled respectfully. Nurse Carter. Thank you. Victoria looked surprised. I was only doing my job. The general shook his head. No. You did far more than that. You recognized a weapon that almost no civilian medical professional could identify. You made the correct decision under enormous pressure. And because of that, you saved one of our people. Victoria remained humble. I'm just glad he survived. The general nodded. He survived because of you. Before anyone could say another word, a loud alarm suddenly echoed from the intensive care unit. Every nurse turned toward the sound. One doctor rushed into the hallway. The patient is crashing. Victoria's attention immediately shifted. Without waiting for permission, she started running toward the ICU. The general followed closely behind. Dr. Hayes also rushed after them. But this time, no one was looking at him for answers. Every eye in the hospital was focused on the nurse they had just fired. And in only a few moments, she would face an even greater medical challenge than the first one. Victoria reached the intensive care room before anyone else. Doctors and nurses quickly stepped aside. The patient was connected to several monitors. Only a few minutes earlier, his condition had seemed stable. Now every machine was sounding alarms. His heartbeat had become dangerously irregular. His blood pressure was falling fast. One young doctor looked at the monitor in panic. His heart is failing. Another doctor immediately prepared emergency medication. We need the standard cardiac protocol. Victoria quickly looked at the patient's face. His breathing was becoming weaker again. Tiny muscle spasms had returned. His skin had started turning pale. She didn't need more than a few seconds. The toxin isn't gone, she said. Everyone looked at her. It has entered a second phase. Dr. Hayes pushed his way into the room. This is ventricular tachycardia. We follow standard treatment. Prepare the anti-arrhythmic drugs. Victoria immediately shook her head. No. Several people stared at her. If we use those drugs now, his heart may completely shut down. Dr. Hayes laughed bitterly. So now you're teaching cardiology too? Victoria ignored the comment. She looked directly at Olivia. I need the lipid emulsion kit. Olivia didn't hesitate. She immediately ran toward the emergency cabinet. Dr. Hayes stepped in front of her. No one moves. I'm still the chief surgeon. Before Olivia could respond, the general spoke. His voice filled the room. Follow Nurse Carter's orders. The room became silent. Nobody questioned him. Olivia quickly returned carrying a large white medical bag. Victoria opened it. Inside were special intravenous lipid solutions. Most people in the room had never seen them used before. One resident quietly asked, "What is that?" Victoria answered while preparing the medication. Some toxins hide inside body fat. This treatment acts like a magnet. It pulls the poison away from the heart before permanent damage happens. Several doctors listened carefully. Even those who doubted her before were now paying close attention. Victoria connected the solution to the patient's central foreline. She carefully adjusted the infusion pump. Slow infusion. No mistakes. Olivia nodded confidently. Everything was ready. Victoria slowly started the treatment. Everyone watched the monitor. 5 long seconds passed. Nothing changed. 10 seconds. Still nothing. The heartbeat remained dangerously unstable. One nurse whispered, "It's not working." Victoria remained calm. Wait. 15 seconds later. The monitor suddenly changed. The irregular rhythm became slower. The heart rate gradually returned toward normal. The blood pressure started rising. The oxygen level increased. Several doctors looked at the screen in complete disbelief. It's stabilizing. Another resident checked the patient's pulse. It feels stronger. Olivia smiled with relief. We did it. Victoria quietly exhaled. Keep monitoring him. The danger isn't completely over. The general walked closer. Will he survive? Victoria looked at the patient for several seconds. Finally she nodded. Yes. If nothing unexpected happens during the next 48 hours, he should recover. The general smiled for the first time. You've saved him twice. Victoria simply replied. We're not finished until he wakes up. Outside the room. Hospital staff had gathered in the hallway. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. Word spread quickly. The nurse who had been fired had just saved the patient again. People who ignored her earlier were now looking at her with admiration. Even some doctors who once doubted her quietly admitted she had been right from the beginning. Dr. Hayes stood alone near the doorway. Nobody asked for his opinion anymore. The hospital director slowly approached him. His face looked serious. What exactly happened in that emergency room? Dr. Hayes struggled to answer. It was a difficult case. The director interrupted him. No. It was a disaster. You nearly lost a federal operative. And then you fired the person who saved him. Dr. Hayes looked away. He had no explanation. At that moment, another group entered the hospital. This time they wore military medical uniforms. They carried highly specialized equipment. One of them approached the general. Our aircraft finally landed. We're ready to transport the patient. The general nodded. Good. He then turned toward Victoria. Our medical team reviewed everything you did. They fully agree with every decision. Victoria felt relieved. She had trusted her experience. Now military specialists had confirmed it. The patient was carefully moved onto a transport stretcher. Every tube and monitor was checked twice. The military doctors prepared to take him to a secure medical facility. Before leaving, one of them looked at Victoria. I've worked with battlefield medics for 20 years. What you accomplished tonight was extraordinary. Victoria smiled politely. It wasn't extraordinary. It was simply the right thing to do. The doctor shook her hand. I hope we work together again. As the patient was taken toward the waiting helicopter, dozens of hospital employees watched silently through the windows. Some nurses quietly applauded. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Olivia stood beside Victoria. I almost gave the wrong medication. Victoria placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You stopped. That's what matters. Olivia nodded. I'll never forget tonight. Victoria smiled. Neither will I. Just when everyone believed the night was finally over, the general received another secure phone call. His expression immediately changed. He listened carefully without saying a word. When the call ended, he turned toward Victoria. It isn't over. Victoria looked concerned. What happened? The general lowered his voice. The man you saved wasn't carrying the only secret. He was trying to stop something much bigger. Victoria frowned. What do you mean? The people who poisoned him are still out there. And now they know he survived. Victoria looked toward the helicopter lifting into the night sky. For a few seconds she remained silent. Then she asked, What do you need me to do? The general smiled. I was hoping you'd ask. Before we continue, if stories about courage, impossible choices, and ordinary people becoming heroes inspire you, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves unforgettable true style drama. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories every week. The general took a deep breath. Because what I'm about to tell you could change your life forever. Victoria looked at the general for several seconds. She could tell from his face that this was no ordinary request. What exactly do you need from me? She asked. The general folded his hands behind his back. Our intelligence team has been tracking a dangerous organization for months. They managed to steal a highly experimental chemical weapon. The man you saved was our lead undercover agent. Victoria quietly listened. He was only hours away from identifying the people behind the operation. But before he could report back, they attacked him. Victoria slowly nodded. So they failed. The general looked at her seriously. Only because you refused to follow the wrong medical order. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the sound of the helicopter slowly disappeared into the distance. The general continued. Victoria, people like you are extremely rare. You stay calm under pressure. You trust experience instead of pride. And you refuse to let authority stand in the way of saving a life. Victoria smiled softly. I simply do what every medical professional should do. The general shook his head. If that were true, we wouldn't be standing here. At that moment, the hospital director slowly walked toward them. His confident attitude from earlier had completely disappeared. Miss Carter, I owe you an apology. Victoria remained silent. The director continued. I acted too quickly. I trusted the wrong person. I should have listened before making a decision. I'd like to officially cancel your suspension. And if you're willing, we would like to promote you as Director of Emergency Nursing. Several doctors standing nearby looked surprised. It was the highest nursing position in the hospital. Many people spent decades hoping for that opportunity. Victoria looked around the emergency department. She saw nurses working tirelessly. She saw frightened families waiting for updates. She remembered every night she had spent inside those walls. Then she looked toward Dr. Hayes. He stood alone. His head was lowered. For the first time in years. No one was afraid of him. The director turned toward Dr. Hayes. Doctor, I'll need your hospital identification badge. Dr. Hayes slowly looked up. What? The board has placed you on immediate administrative leave while a full investigation begins. Several staff members exchanged shocked looks. The director continued. We've reviewed witness statements. You ignored clear medical evidence. You threatened a member of your own team. You attempted to dismiss the person who ultimately saved the patient's life. Dr. Hayes tried to defend himself. I was following standard protocol. Victoria quietly interrupted. Sometimes patients don't follow textbooks. The hallway became completely silent. Nobody could disagree. Dr. Hayes slowly removed his identification badge. For years he had believed titles made someone important. Tonight, he learned that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. Two hospital administrators escorted him toward the exit. None of the nurses celebrated. None of the doctors laughed. They simply watched him leave. Victoria felt no satisfaction. She had never wanted revenge. She only wanted the patient to live. The general noticed her expression. You don't seem happy. Victoria smiled gently. I never wanted him to lose everything. I only wanted him to listen. The general nodded with respect. That's exactly why people trust you. A few minutes later, Olivia walked over carrying Victoria's folded hospital uniform. I think this belongs to you. Victoria laughed softly. I thought I'd never wear it again. Olivia smiled. I think everyone here hopes you do. Several nurses nearby quietly applauded. One by one. Doctors also joined in. Not because Victoria had embarrassed anyone, but because she had reminded everyone why they entered medicine in the first place. To save lives. Not protect egos. The hospital director extended his hand. So, will you stay? Victoria looked toward the general. He smiled. My offer still stands. We're building a national emergency medical response team. We need experienced professionals. You can help train doctors, nurses, military medics, and emergency responders across the country. You'll save far more lives than you ever could inside one hospital. Victoria thought carefully. Both opportunities meant helping people. One inside a single hospital, the other across an entire nation. Finally, she smiled. I've spent my whole life treating emergencies. Maybe it's time I help others prepare for them. The general extended his hand. Welcome to the team. Victoria shook it firmly. It would be an honor. Weeks later, the undercover agent made a full recovery. His testimony helped authorities dismantle the criminal network responsible for the attack. Several dangerous suspects were arrested. The stolen chemical materials were recovered before they could be used. The operation was considered one of the most successful joint missions between military intelligence and emergency medical services. As for Washington Memorial Hospital, things changed forever. Doctors and nurses began training together instead of competing. Senior staff encouraged junior nurses to speak up whenever something seemed wrong. Medical decisions became teamwork instead of personal pride. A new policy was introduced. Every member of the emergency team, regardless of rank, had the right to question a treatment if patient safety was at risk. That single change saved countless lives in the years that followed. Victoria never considered herself a hero. Whenever reporters asked about that unforgettable night, she always gave the same answer. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was simply doing what every healthcare worker promises to do. Protect the patient. Always. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of this story. Real heroes don't always wear uniforms decorated with medals. Sometimes they wear simple hospital scrubs. Sometimes they stand quietly in the background. Sometimes they risk everything without expecting any reward. Because when someone else's life depends on one decision, courage isn't about power. It's about choosing to do what's right, even when everyone else tells you not to. If this story inspired you, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, subscribe for more unforgettable stories of courage and justice, and share this video with friends and family. You never know whose day or perspective you might change. Until the next story, stay kind, stay brave, and remember, one person's courage can change the lives of many.